That stupid woman is useless. Those were the words that came out of my own son's mouth when I returned to the United States after 8 years away. 8 years, nearly a decade, without stepping foot on the land where I was raised, without smelling the aroma of fresh coffee in the kitchen of our family ranch, without hearing the rustle of the wind through the tall grass at dawn. But what I found that Saturday in November was not the home I had left behind. It was something I couldn't have imagined in my worst nightmares. My name is Agnes Miller. I am 60 years old, and the story I am about to tell you changed everything I thought I knew about my son, about forgiveness, and about how far evil can go when it hides behind a mask of normalcy. When the plane touched down in Dallas, I felt a knot in my stomach that I hadn't felt in years. I carried only a small suitcase and an old photograph I had kept in my purse for decades. In that photo, Frank is barely 5 years old, smiling with his tiny teeth, hugging a golden retriever puppy we had given him for his birthday. That boy with the bright eyes and easy laugh was my son, or at least, he used to be. The rental car I took from the airport took nearly 4 hours to reach the family ranch in the Texas Hill Country. 4 hours of dusty back roads and landscapes I recognized, but which at the same time felt alien, as if time had passed only for me and not for this place. When I arrived, the wrought iron gate was rusted. The white paint on the main house was peeling off in strips. The garden my mother had tended with such love was overgrown with weeds. Everything looked abandoned. I rang the bell. No one answered. I rang again. Silence. Then I heard a shout. A man's scream came from the back of the property, near the old barns and the chicken coop. My heart began to beat faster. I walked around the house, dragging my suitcase along the dirt path, my shoes filled with dust. The midday sun burned the back of my neck. And then I saw Frank. My son was standing in front of the old chicken coop, arms crossed, screaming at someone inside. He was wearing expensive clothes, a watch that glinted in the sun, and pristine leather boots. "I told you to clean this mess before dark," he barked in a voice full of contempt I had never heard before. "If you don't finish, you're staying in there all night. Do you hear me?" There was no response from inside the coop. "I'm talking to you," he yelled again, kicking the wooden door with force. I approached slowly, without him seeing me, and then I heard something that turned my blood to ice. A woman's voice, weak, broken. Yes, Frank, I'm almost done." Frank let out a bitter laugh. "That stupid woman is useless," he said aloud, as if talking to himself. 9 years married to her, and every day she gets more incompetent. 9 years. 9 years married. That meant he had married her just a year after I had moved away to Seattle. I felt my legs tremble. "Frank," I said with a firm voice, even though I was falling apart inside. My son spun around. His eyes went wide. For a split second, I saw something like fear cross his face, but he quickly masked it with a forced smile. "Mom," he said, walking toward me with open arms. What are you doing here?" I didn't return the hug. "Who is in there?" I asked, pointing to the coop. Frank lowered his arms. His smile vanished. "Nobody important," he replied coldly. "Just Beth. She's cleaning." "Beth," I repeated. "Your wife." He nodded as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Why is she locked in a chicken coop?" I asked, feeling rage begin to surge in my throat. "She's not locked in, Mom. She's working. Someone has to do the chores around here." I walked toward the coop door. Frank tried to stop me, but I brushed him aside. "Mom, wait. I pulled the door open, and what I saw shattered my soul into 1,000 pieces. Beth was sitting on the dirt floor, surrounded by feathers, chicken droppings, and scraps of rotting food. She was wearing old, tattered clothes stained with filth. Her long, dark hair was matted and full of straw. Her hands were filthy, her nails broken, and in her palms she held a handful of dry, cracked corn. She was putting it in her mouth. She was eating raw chicken feed as if it were her only option. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. She tried to stand up, but she was so weak she stumbled. "Mrs. Miller," she whispered with a cracked voice. I didn't know you were coming." I knelt in front of her. My knees hit the dirty ground. I didn't care. "What has he done to you?" I asked softly, taking her hands in mine. She shook her head, tears streaming down her dirty cheeks. "Nothing, ma'am. I was just cleaning, like always. How long have you been in here?" She didn't answer. She just looked down. Behind me, I heard Frank's voice. Mom, it's not what it looks like. She exaggerates everything. She's dramatic. She's always been this way. I stood up and turned to him. I looked him straight in the eyes, and in that moment, I saw a stranger. I didn't see the boy from the photograph. I didn't see the son I raised. I saw a man who had lost all humanity. Let's go, Beth, I said firmly, reaching out my hand to her. We're leaving. Beth looked at me with terror. She looked at Frank, then back at me. Ma'am, I can't. We are leaving, I repeated. I took her hand. She was shaking. Frank stepped toward us. Mom, you can't take her. She's my wife. This is my house. I looked at him with a calm I didn't truly feel. This house is mine too, Frank. And this woman is coming with me. We walked out of the coop. Beth walked beside me, limping slightly. I noticed bruises on her arms. Frank followed us, shouting, You can't do this. You're going to ruin everything. She's mine. She's my responsibility. I didn't answer. We got to the house. I grabbed the keys to the old SUV parked in the garage. Thank God, it started. Beth sat in the passenger seat, still trembling, still crying in silence. I revved the engine. Frank pounded on the window. Mom, don't do this. You'll regret it. I looked at him one last time through the glass. No, son, I whispered. You're the one who's going to regret this. And we drove away. During the drive toward town, Beth didn't speak. She only wept. I didn't speak either. I didn't know what to say. But in my mind, I was already drafting a plan. A plan that, 2 hours later, would leave my son paralyzed with terror. Because what I did that night wasn't revenge. It was justice. Sometimes we trust the wrong people far too much. Have you ever been disappointed by someone you loved? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to read it. I drove for 20 minutes until we reached the center of the small town. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Beth remained silent, staring out the window as if she couldn't believe she was out of that coop. When we passed the local church, I saw her cross herself slowly. Are you hungry? I asked gently. She nodded without looking at me. I parked in front of a small diner I recognized from years ago. Betty, the owner, was still working behind the counter. When she saw us walk in, her eyes widened in recognition. Agnes? Is that you? She asked in surprise. Yes, Betty, it's me. Oh, honey, how many years has it been? And this girl. I looked at Beth, who kept her head down, ashamed of her appearance. She's my daughter-in-law, I said simply. She needs something hot to eat. Betty didn't ask any more questions. She prepared a bowl of chicken noodle soup, some mashed potatoes, and fresh biscuits. She also brought a large glass of iced tea. Beth ate slowly at first, as if she were afraid someone would take the plate away. Then she began to eat faster, her hands shaking. I watched as tears fell into her food, but she didn't stop eating. Take it easy, sweetie, I said, putting my hand over hers. Eat as much as you want. No one is going to rush you. She looked at me with eyes full of sadness and gratitude. Thank you, Mrs. Miller, she whispered. It's been a long time since I ate something like this. I felt my heart break again. How long? She lowered her gaze. I don't know, maybe 2 weeks. Frank says I have to earn my food, that if I don't work well, I don't deserve to eat at the table. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. I needed to stay calm. And your family? I asked. Do they know how he treats you? Beth shook her head. They live in Pennsylvania. I haven't talked to them in years. Frank, he won't let me use the phone. He says my family fills my head with stupid ideas. When was the last time you spoke to them? About 6 years ago, she replied with a broken voice. My mom called for my birthday. Frank answered and told her I didn't want to talk to her, that I was busy. Then he smashed my phone. He said I didn't need it, that he was my only family now. 6 years. 6 years without speaking to her mother. While Beth finished eating, I took out my cell phone. I had to act fast. I couldn't waste time. First, I called the nearest hospital. Hello, this is Agnes Miller. I need to bring someone in for an emergency medical exam. I suspect severe malnutrition and possible domestic abuse. The receptionist gave me instructions immediately. Then I dialed another number, a number I had kept for years, of a well-known attorney who had helped me with ranch paperwork. "Mr. Henderson," I said when he answered. "It's Agnes Miller. I need your help. It's urgent." "Agnes? What's going on?" I explained everything in a low voice so Beth wouldn't hear. The coop, the rags, the raw corn, the bruises, the isolation. There was a silence on the other end of the line. "Agnes," Mr. Henderson finally said gravely, "what you are describing are serious crimes. We're talking about domestic violence, kidnapping, and abuse. Are you sure you want to proceed legally against your own son?" I looked at Beth. She was wiping the plate with a piece of biscuit, savoring every last drop of broth. "Completely sure," I replied. "What do I need to do?" "First, take her to the hospital. Get a medical record of everything. Photos of the injuries, blood tests, a psychological evaluation if possible. I'll handle preparing a formal complaint. I'll need your statement and hers. And if she's afraid to testify, we'll handle it with care and respect. But Agnes, if what you're telling me is true, your son could face several years in prison." "I know," I said, "and it's exactly what he deserves." I hung up. Beth was looking at me with wide eyes. "Mrs. Miller, what are you going to do?" "What I should have done a long time ago," I replied. "Come on, I'm taking you to the hospital." "No, please," she said in a panic. "If Frank finds out, Frank is never going to hurt you again," I interrupted firmly. "I promise you." At the hospital, the doctor who examined her was an older man with a kind but professional gaze. When he finished the exam, he called me aside. "Mrs. Miller, this young woman has multiple bruises in different stages of healing. That means the beatings have been constant for months, maybe years. She has signs of severe malnutrition, dehydration, and," he stopped, appearing to struggle with the next part. "She has old fractures in 2 ribs that were never properly treated, and scars on her back that appear to be from blunt objects." I felt the room spin. "How long do you think she's been suffering this?" The doctor shook his head. "It's hard to say exactly, but judging by the state of the scars and the fractures, I'd say at least 3 or 4 years. 3 or 4 years. While I was far away, living my life in another state, trying to forget the conflict with my son, Beth was being tortured in my own home." The doctor continued, "I'm going to make a full medical report with photographs and analysis. This is legal evidence. Do you plan to report this?" "I'm already doing it," I replied. That night, after Beth was admitted to the hospital for observation and rehydration, I met Mr. Henderson at his office. I gave him all the information. The medical report, the photos I had taken of the coop myself, and my written testimony of what I had witnessed. "This is enough to start an investigation," the lawyer said. "But I need you to understand something, Agnes. Once we file this with the district attorney, there's no turning back. They will arrest your son." "I understand perfectly," I said without hesitation. "Are you sure?" I took the old photograph out of my purse, the one of the 5-year-old boy hugging the puppy. I placed it on his desk. "That was my son," I said. "A sweet, loving boy, full of light. I don't know at what point he turned into the monster I saw today. Maybe it was my fault for leaving. Maybe it was things I'll never know. But that man I found today, beating and humiliating his wife, that is not my son, and I will not protect him." Mr. Henderson nodded with respect. "We will proceed then." It was 9 p.m. when Mr. Henderson and I arrived at the sheriff's department. We had the complete file, the medical report, photos, testimonies, evidence. The deputy who saw us reviewed everything carefully. His face grew more serious with every page he read. "This is very grave," he finally said. "We are going to issue an immediate arrest warrant. Do you have the suspect's current address?" I gave him the address of the ranch. "He lives there. He is my son." The deputy looked at me with sympathy. "I understand this must be very difficult for you, ma'am." "What was difficult was seeing that girl eating raw corn in a chicken coop," I replied. "This is the right thing to do." At 11 p.m., my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. "Mom?" It was Frank's voice, but it no longer sounded arrogant or cold. It sounded terrified. "What did you do?" "The police are here. They say they have an arrest warrant. This is a mistake." "It's not a mistake, Frank," I said calmly. "It's justice. You can't do this to me. I'm your son." "That is exactly why I am doing it," I replied. "Because I still have hope that one day you will understand what you did, and maybe, just maybe, You will become the man you could have been again. Mom, please, don't let them take me. I'm begging you. I closed my eyes. Tears began to fall. I'm sorry, son, but I cannot save you from the consequences of your own actions. I hung up and cried. I cried for the boy who hugged puppies. I cried for the mother who didn't see him turn into a monster. I cried for Beth and for all the women who suffer in silence. But I did not regret it, because sometimes true love means saying no more. While I tell you this, I wonder where you are listening from. Write the name of your city in the comments. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed in a small hotel in town, lying on a bed that smelled of lavender and loneliness. The phone kept ringing. It was Frank calling over and over from the station. I didn't answer. In the darkness of that room, memories began to wash over me like waves. Memories from 8 years ago. Memories of the day I left Texas and swore never to return. The year was 2016. I was 52 years old. My husband, Robert, had passed away just 6 months earlier from a sudden heart attack. I hadn't even finished processing his absence when everything began to crumble. Frank was 24 back then. He had just finished college with a degree in business administration and returned to the ranch with big ideas and an even bigger ego. Mom, this ranch is in ruins, he told me one July afternoon while reviewing the account books in his father's study. Dad ran it like it was the 1950s. We need to modernize. Your father did the best he could, I defended. Thanks to him, we always had food on the table. Food, yes, but nothing else. Look at this place, Mom. Half the land is uncultivated. The employees are old men who can't keep up. There's no technology, no vision. There is dignity, I said. There is respect. Your father always treated the people who worked here well. Frank let out a dry laugh. Respect doesn't pay the bills, Mom. That was the first sign, but I was so lost in my own grief that I didn't see it. In the following weeks, Frank began making changes. He fired Joe, the foreman who had worked with us for 30 years. He fired the women who helped in the kitchen. He hired new, younger people he could pay less. It's efficiency, Mom, he would say. It's how business is done now. I tried to stop him, but he had the legal power. Robert had left the ranch in both our names, half mine, half Frank's. And with every major decision, Frank threatened to sell his half if I didn't support him. If you don't trust me, I'll sell my share and you can stay here and run this alone, he would say. Is that what you want? And I gave in, time and time again, because he was my son, because I had just lost my husband, and because I was tired. Then, in October of that year, Frank arrived one afternoon with a young woman. Mom, I'd like you to meet Beth, he said with a smile I hadn't seen in months. She's my girlfriend. Beth was beautiful. She was 22, with long dark hair, expressive eyes, and a shy smile. She wore a simple pale pink dress and white sandals. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Miller, she said softly, extending her hand. The pleasure is mine, dear, I replied, shaking her hand. I liked her immediately. There was a genuine sweetness in her gaze, an innocence that reminded me of myself when I was young. During dinner, Beth told me she was studying nursing in the city, that she came from a humble family in Pennsylvania, that her parents worked in a factory and she was the first to go to college. Frank and I met at a coffee shop, she said, looking at him with loving eyes. I was studying for an exam, and he sat at the table next to mine. We started talking, and I knew she was the woman of my life, Frank interrupted, taking her hand. I smiled. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to think my son had found love, that it would soften him, make him a better person. How foolish I was. 3 months later, in January 2017, Frank announced they were getting married. It'll be a small wedding, he said, just close family and a few friends. The wedding was held at the town chapel on a Saturday morning. Beth looked radiant in a simple white dress. Her parents traveled from Pennsylvania. They were hard-working, humble people with calloused hands and wide smiles. Beth's mother, Martha, hugged me after the ceremony. Thank you for welcoming my daughter into your family, she said with tears in her eyes. I know Frank will take care of her. You can tell he's a good man. I nodded, smiling, but inside, something made me uneasy. I had noticed how Frank spoke to Beth during the wedding preparations, always with a tone of superiority, as if she were a child who needed constant instructions. No, Beth, not that color for the flowers. I told you I prefer white. Beth, don't invite so many people from your side. This is a wedding, not a town hall meeting. Beth, when they ask you something at the reception, keep it brief. Don't tell your whole life story. And she accepted everything with a submissive smile, with a voice that said yes, honey, to everything. I should have seen the signs. I should have said something. But I didn't. The first few months after the wedding were strange. Beth and Frank moved into the ranch, into one of the rooms in the east wing. I continued living in the main part of the house, in my usual bedroom. At first, Beth tried to help in the kitchen, in the garden, with everything. She was hardworking and kind. But Frank began to change. I noticed it in small things, in how he spoke to her when he thought I wasn't around. Did you clean the room yet? Why did it take so long? It's not that hard to run a rag, Beth. The food is salty. Didn't you taste it before serving? No. You're not going to visit your parents this weekend. We have things to do here. And Beth grew smaller, quieter. The light in her eyes began to fade. I tried to talk to her one day while we were making coffee in the kitchen. Beth, honey, are you okay? She looked at me, startled. Yes, Mrs. Miller. Why do you ask? I've noticed you're different. Quieter. I'm just tired, she said quickly. You know, adjusting to married life. If you ever need to talk, everything is fine, ma'am, truly. But it wasn't fine, and I knew it. Everything exploded one night in June 2017. I went down to the kitchen past 11 p.m. because I couldn't sleep. I needed some chamomile tea. When I got to the kitchen, I heard voices in the backyard. It was Frank and Beth. They were arguing. I went to the window and saw them. Frank had Beth by the arm, gripping her tightly. She was trying to pull away. Let me go, Frank. You're hurting me. I'll let you go when you tell me the truth. Why did you call your mother behind my back? Because she's my mother. I have a right to talk to her. No, not when I tell you not to. In this house, things are done my way. I stepped out immediately. Frank, let her go right now. My son turned around. He looked at me with fury. This isn't your problem, Mom. It is when you are hurting your wife in my own home, I said firmly, walking toward them. Frank let her go. Beth rubbed her arm, crying. Go inside, Beth, I said gently. Go to your room. She obeyed, almost running toward the house. I was left alone with Frank. What is wrong with you? I asked. Is this how you're going to treat your wife? She needs to learn to obey me, he said coldly. She's my wife. I provide for her. I decide. She is not your property, Frank. She is a person. You don't understand, Mom. You come from another generation. Things have changed. Yes, they've changed, I said. They were supposed to change for the better, weren't they? Not so men could treat their wives like slaves. Frank let out a bitter laugh. Do you know what your problem is, Mom? You've always been weak. Dad dominated you, and you accepted it. That's why this ranch is the way it is. That's why we never progressed. I felt as if I had been slapped. Your father never mistreated me, I said with a trembling voice. Never. Not physically, Frank said. But he kept you there. Quiet, obedient, without a voice or a vote. And look what you got. Nothing. I gotta raise you, I said. Though now I wonder if I did it right. That night I didn't sleep. The next day, I asked Beth to come to town with me. I needed to talk to her alone. In a small cafe, over 2 cups of hot chocolate, I asked her directly, Beth, has Frank hit you? She shook her head quickly. No, ma'am, never. Has he hurt you in any other way? She looked down. He just has a strong character. But he loves me. I know he loves me. Love doesn't scream, I said. Love doesn't squeeze arms until they leave marks. Love doesn't isolate you from your family. Tears began to fall down her cheeks. I don't know what to do, Mrs. Miller. My parents are so proud that I married well. I can't disappoint them. They want you to be happy, not to suffer. But Frank says he's going to change, that he's just stressed about the ranch, that things will get better. I took her hands in mine. Honey, men who say they're going to change rarely do. And when they do, it's because they decided it for themselves, not because you stayed around waiting. She sobbed. I have nowhere to go. There is always somewhere to go, I said. Always. But Beth was afraid, and I didn't push further. That was my first mistake. The following weeks were tense. Frank and I barely spoke. Beth moved through the house like a ghost, thinner and more faded every day. I tried to talk to my son several more times. Every conversation ended in an argument. Until one day, in mid-July 2017, Frank gave me an ultimatum. "Mom, either you trust me and let me run this ranch the way it should be, or I sell my share and you stay here alone." "You can't sell it," I said. "It's your inheritance. I can do whatever I want. It's my legal right." I was tired, devastated. I had lost my husband just a year before. My son had become a stranger. My daughter-in-law was suffering, and I didn't know how to help her. So, I made a decision. "Sell your part if you want," I said. "I'm leaving." Frank looked surprised. "What?" "I'm getting out of here. I'm leaving Texas. You two can have the ranch. Do whatever you want with it." "Where are you going to go?" "I have a cousin in Seattle," I said. "She's invited me many times. I think it's time to accept." And so it was. In August 2017, I packed 2 suitcases, sold my half of the ranch to Frank for a low price, and left. I didn't say goodbye to Beth. I didn't have the courage. I only left a note under her door that said, "If you ever need help, find me. I will always be here for you." But she never found me, and I never returned. Until now. Until 8 years later, in November 2024, life brought me back to find her locked in a chicken coop eating raw corn. And I understood that my flight hadn't been freedom, it had been cowardice. I still wonder if I did the right thing by leaving that day. What would you have done in my place? The next morning, I returned to the hospital. Beth was awake, sitting in bed in a clean hospital gown. They had washed her hair. Without the dirt and dust, I could see how young she still was, 31 years old, an entire life ahead of her. But her eyes looked like someone much older. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller," she said weakly. "Good morning, honey," I replied, sitting in the chair next to her bed. "How are you feeling?" "Better," she said. "The doctors say I have to stay a few more days to get my strength back." "That's good. You need to rest." There was a long silence. Beth looked at her hands on the white sheets. "Mrs. Miller, is it true that Frank is in jail?" I nodded. "Yes." "For how long?" "I don't know yet. It depends on the judge. But the charges are serious, Beth. Domestic violence, assault, kidnapping." She began to cry silently. "I never wanted things to go this far," she whispered. I only wanted him to love me." I took her hand. "Tell me what happened," I said softly. "Tell me how we got here." And Beth began to speak. "At first, everything was beautiful," she said, wiping her tears. "When we got married, Frank was attentive, loving. He brought me flowers, told me I was the most beautiful woman in the world." "When did he change?" "Little by little," she answered. "So slowly that I didn't realize until it was too late." She told me the first few months after the wedding were good. Frank was busy with the ranch, but he always came home with something for her, a chocolate bar, a magazine, small things. "But after you left," she continued, "everything changed." "What happened?" "Frank was very angry when you left. He said you had abandoned him, that now he had to handle everything alone. And he started to take it out on me." I asked her how. Beth took a deep breath before continuing. "First it was the comments. Small criticisms. 'Beth, this food isn't right. Beth, the house is dirty. Beth, why are you wearing that?' I tried to do everything better, but it was never enough. And then he started with the phone. In September 2017, he asked me to give him my cell phone. He said he needed to check it because we were spending too much on the data plan. I gave it to him. I had nothing to hide. Beth told me that Frank checked every message, every call, every photo. He found messages from her mother asking how she was, and he got angry. He said her family was filling her head with ideas, that she didn't need to talk to them so often." "Did he give it back?" "Yes, but with a condition. I could only use it when he was present, and I had to give him all my passwords." I felt a knot in my stomach. "And you accepted?" She nodded, ashamed. "I thought it was temporary, that he was just stressed about the ranch, that soon he'd be the man I fell in love with again. But he didn't come back." By late 2017, Frank controlled every aspect of Beth's life. He told me what time to get up, what clothes to wear, what to cook, she explained. If something wasn't how he wanted, he screamed. And I just wanted to avoid the fights. "Did he hit you during that time?" Not yet, she said. The hits came later. She told me that in January 2018, a year after their wedding, her mother called from Pennsylvania. Beth answered without thinking. Frank was out in the fields. I talked to my mom for 10 minutes, Beth said. I told her I was fine, that everything was perfect. I didn't want to worry her. But when I hung up, I saw Frank standing in the doorway. He had come back early. What did he do? He ripped the phone out of my hands, smashed it on the floor until it was in pieces, and then he slapped me. Beth touched her cheek as if she could still feel that first hit. He told me I was a liar, that I had disobeyed his rule. He said if I ever did anything like that again, I would regret it. And did you? Did you talk to them again? I couldn't, she whispered. I had no phone, and Frank never took me to town. I was trapped. The following months were a slow nightmare. Frank began to isolate her completely. They no longer went out together. They didn't receive visitors. If anyone came to the ranch, Beth had to stay in her room. Once the local vet came to check some cattle, Beth recounted. I tried to go out and say hello. Frank pulled me by the arm, dragged me back inside, and locked me in the bedroom. He said he couldn't trust me. How long did he keep you locked up? 3 hours, until the vet left. By 2019, 2 years after the wedding, Beth had lost contact with the entire outside world. Her parents stopped calling the house because Frank always answered saying she was busy. My mom sent me a letter for my birthday, Beth said with a broken voice. Frank intercepted it, read it in front of me, and then burned it in the fireplace. He said my family didn't love me anymore, that only he loved me. And you believed him? I started to, she admitted. When you're that alone, that tired, you start to doubt everything, even yourself. The beatings became more frequent. At first it was a slap every now and then, she explained. Then shoves, then kicks. Frank said it was my fault, that if I were a better wife, he wouldn't have to correct me. Did no one notice? There were no employees left on the ranch. Frank had fired them all. He said we didn't need people, that he and I could handle everything alone. But in reality, he just wanted me working. By 2020, Beth was working from dawn until night. He woke me up at 5 a.m., she said. I had to make breakfast, clean the whole house, wash clothes by hand because Frank said the machine wasted too much water, tend to the chickens, feed the livestock, cook lunch, clean again, make dinner. And what did Frank do? He supervised, she said bitterly. He sat with his coffee and his newspaper and yelled at me if something wasn't perfect. Sometimes he didn't even work in the fields. He just watched me suffer. And the food? What did you eat? Scraps, she said. Frank ate first. Whatever was left was for me. If I complained, he punished me by making me go without food for days. That's why I was so thin. That's why I was eating raw corn in the coop, because I was hungry. A hunger that had lasted years. The chicken coop started as a punishment, Beth explained. The first time was in 2021. I accidentally broke a plate. Frank was furious. He dragged me to the coop and locked me in there all night. All night? Yes. No food, no water. Just me and the chickens. It was cold. I was shaking so hard I thought I would die there. But she survived. And after that night, the coop became her regular prison. Every time Frank thought I had done something wrong, he locked me in there, she said. Sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. And how did you survive in there? I drank from the chicken's water trough, she whispered, ashamed. And I ate the corn he threw to them. It was the only thing I had. I felt tears streaming down my cheeks. Beth, I am so sorry. It's not your fault, Mrs. Miller. Yes, it is, I said. I left you here. I left you with him. I saw the signs, and I left anyway. She shook her head. You didn't know it would go this far. I didn't know either. Why did you never try to escape? I asked. I tried, she said. Once in 2022, I managed to slip out while Frank was asleep. I walked for hours until I reached the main highway. A trucker stopped and offered to take me to town. What happened? Frank caught up to us, she said with a trembling voice. He was in his truck. He forced me out of the big rig. He told the driver I had mental health issues, that I was confused, that he was my husband and he was taking me home. And the driver did nothing. He believed Frank. Everyone always believes him. Frank knows how to talk, how to convince people. What did he do when he got you back? Beth didn't answer immediately. Her hands were shaking. He locked me in the chicken coop for a full week. No food, very little water. He told me if I ever tried to run away again, he would kill me. And I believed him. After that, Beth stopped trying. She resigned herself. She faded away, becoming a shadow. "The last 2 years were the worst," she said. "He barely let me in the house. I slept in the coop most nights. He gave me a piece of bread every 2 days. He treated me worse than the animals. And no one asked about you?" "There was no one left to ask," she whispered. "My family thought I had abandoned them. The neighbors thought I had moved away. Frank told everyone I had moved back to Pennsylvania with my parents. No one knew I was still there. No one was looking for me. Until you came. Until you opened that door and found me eating raw corn, dressed in rags, a ghost of the woman I used to be. When I saw you," Beth said with tears falling, "I thought I was dreaming. I thought I had finally gone crazy and was hallucinating. I couldn't believe someone had come for me." I took her hands in mine. "I am here now," I said. "And you are never going to be alone again. I promise you." She leaned her head on my shoulder and cried. She cried for the 8 lost years. She cried for the woman she could have been. She cried for all the pain she had kept in silence. And I cried with her, because I understood that my son hadn't just stolen her freedom. He had stolen her life. While I tell you this, I wonder where you are listening from. Write the name of your city in the comments. 3 days after the report, Mr. Henderson called my cell. "Agnes, I need you to come to my office. There are updates on the case." I arrived that same afternoon. Beth was still in the hospital, recovering slowly. The doctor said she would need at least 2 more weeks of care before she could be discharged. Mr. Henderson received me with a serious expression. "Please, sit down," he said, gesturing to a chair. I sat with my heart racing. "What happened?" "The district attorney has accepted all charges," he explained. "Aggravated domestic violence, kidnapping, and torture. These are serious felonies, Agnes. Your son could face between 15 and 20 years in prison." I felt the air leave my lungs. 15 to 20 years. My son. My only son. "And him?" I asked weakly. "Has he said anything?" The lawyer nodded. "He's asked to talk to you several times. He keeps calling from the detention center. He insists it's all a misunderstanding." "It is not a misunderstanding," I said firmly. "I saw what he did to Beth." "I know," said the lawyer. "And the evidence is overwhelming. The medical report, the photos, your testimony. But I need to warn you about something, Agnes." "What?" "Frank hired a defense attorney, a good one, and they are going to try to discredit everything. They'll say Beth is exaggerating, that you have a grudge against your son, that the injuries could have come from something else. They can do that. They can try. That's why we need Beth to testify formally. Her testimony is crucial. Without her, the case weakens." "Has she agreed to testify?" The lawyer shook his head. "I haven't spoken to her yet. I wanted to consult with you first. Testifying will be very hard for her. She'll have to relive all the trauma in front of a judge, in front of lawyers who will question her, in front of her own abuser." "Frank will be there?" "He has a right to be present at the hearing." I closed my eyes. I imagined Beth, still weak, still scared, having to face Frank again. "I'll talk to her," I said. "But I won't pressure her. If she can't do it, I'll understand." That night, I went back to the hospital. Beth was sitting by the window, looking out. She had gained a little weight. Her face didn't look so hollow, but her eyes were still sad. "Hi, Beth," I said softly. She turned and smiled at me. "Mrs. Miller, I'm so glad you came." I sat beside her. "I need to talk to you about something important," I said. "The lawyer says they need your testimony. They need you to testify formally against Frank." I saw her face turn pale. "I have to see him?" "Yes," I said honestly. "He will be at the hearing, but he won't be able to get near you. There will be bailiffs. You'll be protected." Beth began to shake. "I can't, Mrs. Miller. I can't look him in the eyes again. I'm so afraid." "I know, honey, and no one is going to force you. But I want you to understand something. If you don't testify, Frank might go free. He might come back to the ranch. He might hurt you again." She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. "Do you think I can do it?" I think you are stronger than you realize, I said. You survived 8 years of hell. This is just one day, a few hours, and I'll be there with you. You won't be alone. Beth was silent for several minutes. Finally, she nodded. I'll do it, she whispered. Not for me, but for all the women who are going through the same thing and don't have a voice. I took her hand and squeezed it hard. You are very brave, Beth. The hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. That Sunday, I went to visit Frank at the county jail. I didn't want to go. Every part of me resisted. But I needed to see him. I needed to look him in the eyes one last time before the trial. The visiting room was cold and gray. There were metal tables bolted to the floor, uncomfortable chairs, and a smell of disinfectant mixed with sweat. I waited for 20 minutes until they brought him in. Frank walked in wearing an orange inmate jumpsuit, hands cuffed, hair messy. He had lost weight. He had deep dark circles under his eyes. He no longer looked like the arrogant man I found screaming at Beth in the coop. He looked broken. He sat across from me. He didn't smile. "Mom," he said in a raspy voice. "Thanks for coming." I didn't answer. "I know you're mad," he continued. "I know you think I'm a monster, but I need you to understand. Things aren't what they seem." "Oh, no?" I said coldly. "Then explain it to me, Frank. Explain how your wife was locked in a chicken coop eating raw corn with bruises all over her body." "She exaggerates," he said quickly. "She's always been dramatic. Yes, sometimes we argued. Yes, sometimes I lost my patience. But I never tortured her, Mom. Never." "Then the medical report is lying? The fractures in her ribs are imaginary? The scars on her back are made up?" Frank looked down. "It was an accident," he murmured. "She fell." "She fell?" I repeated, feeling the rage rise in my throat. "How many times did she fall, Frank? 10? 20? 50? You don't understand, Mom. You don't know how hard it was for me to run the ranch alone, without your help, without Dad, all the weight on my shoulders. And you decided to take it out on a defenseless woman?" I said. "A woman who loved you? A woman who trusted you?" "I loved her too!" he yelled, standing up suddenly. A guard approached immediately. "Sit down," the guard ordered firmly. Frank obeyed, breathing heavily. "I loved her, Mom," he repeated in a low voice. "But she made me so angry. She always did everything wrong. She always disappointed me." "No, son," I said, standing up. "The one who is a disappointment is you. To me, to your father, to yourself." "Mom, please. Ask Beth to drop the charges. Talk to her. Tell her it was a misunderstanding, that I'll change. I swear I'll change." "I don't believe you anymore, Frank," I said. "And she shouldn't believe you either." "Then what? You're just going to let me rot in here?" "You are going to pay for what you did," I replied. "Like anyone else. You're not special. You're not above the law. I'm your son." "I don't even know who you are anymore," I said, walking toward the door. "The son I raised would never have been capable of what you did." "Mom, wait." I didn't turn around. I walked out of that room and didn't look back. Monday arrived all too quickly. Beth and I arrived at the courthouse early in the morning. She wore simple clothes. I had bought her black slacks, a white blouse, comfortable shoes. Her hair was tied back in a simple braid, no makeup, no jewelry. She looked young, vulnerable, and terrified. "Are you ready?" I asked while we waited outside the courtroom. She shook her head. "No, but I'm going to do it anyway." Mr. Henderson met us in the hallway. "The judge is ready," he said. "Beth, you'll go in first to testify. Agnes, you'll go in after as a witness. Can I go with her?" "Only until she enters the room. Then you'll have to wait outside until it's your turn." We walked to the courtroom door. Before entering, Beth stopped. "Mrs. Miller, if I can't finish, if I freeze." "You won't freeze," I said firmly. "You are stronger than he is. You always have been." She took a deep breath and nodded. She opened the door and walked in. I stayed outside, sitting on a wooden bench, praying in silence. Praying that justice, for once, would be on the right side. An hour later, the door opened. Beth came out. Her eyes were red from crying, but she was walking with her head held high. "How did it go?" I asked, standing up. "I said everything," she replied with a trembling but steady voice. "I told the judge everything he did to me. Everything. And when Frank tried to interrupt, when he tried to say I was lying, the judge silenced him. She told him to have respect, to listen. And what did he do? He cried, Beth said. For the first time in 8 years, I saw him cry. But I don't know if he was crying out of regret or out of fear. Maybe both, I said. Mr. Henderson came out after her. Agnes, it's your turn. I entered the courtroom. The judge was a woman in her 52nds, with a serious but fair gaze. Frank was sitting at a table with his defense lawyer. When he saw me enter, he tried to hold my gaze, but I didn't look away. I testified for 40 minutes. I told them everything I saw that Saturday in November. The coop, the raw corn, the screaming, the bruises, the tattered clothes. I told them about the conflict 8 years ago, about why I left, about my guilt, and I told them about the decision I made, not to protect my son from his own actions. When I finished, the judge thanked me. Mrs. Miller, she said, not many mothers have the courage to do what you did. The court thanks you for your honesty. I left the room with my legs shaking. Beth was waiting for me outside. She hugged me tight. We did it, she whispered. We did it. 2 weeks later, the judge delivered the verdict. Frank was found guilty on all counts: aggravated domestic violence, kidnapping, and torture. The sentence: 18 years in prison. 18 years. When Mr. Henderson gave me the news over the phone, I didn't feel joy. I felt relief, and I felt sadness, because my son wasn't free, but he didn't deserve to be. I still wonder if I did the right thing by reporting him. What would you have done in my place? After the sentencing, Beth and I returned to the ranch. It was a December afternoon. The air smelled of damp earth and the promise of rain. When the car crossed the rusted gate, Beth tensed up. Are you okay? I asked. She nodded, but her hands were shaking in her lap. It's strange, she said in a low voice. Coming back here, but without him. I understand, I said. If you want, we can look for somewhere else. You don't have to stay here if it brings back bad memories. Beth looked out the window. She observed the main house, the neglected garden, the empty pens. No, she finally said. I don't want this place to keep the bad memories. I want to fill it with new things. Good things. I smiled. Then that's what we'll do. The first few days were hard. Beth couldn't sleep in the room she had shared with Frank. She couldn't even walk near it without her legs shaking. So we prepared one of the guest rooms in the north wing, far from everything that reminded her of him. We painted it a light sage green, bought new linens, white curtains, and a small vase for the window. Beth picked wildflowers from the fields and put them in fresh water every morning. I like waking up and seeing something beautiful, she told me one day. For years, the first thing I saw when I woke up was fear. Now, I want to see beauty. We also had to deal with the chicken coop. One Saturday morning, Beth woke up determined. I want to burn the coop, she said during breakfast. I looked at her, surprised. Are you sure? Completely, she replied. I don't want it to exist anymore. I want to see it turn to ashes. So that afternoon, with the help of a neighbor, we dismantled the old coop, moved the chickens to a new run we built on a different part of the property, and then, carefully and under supervision, we burned the wooden structure. Beth stood there watching the flames. She didn't cry. She didn't say a word. She just watched until everything turned to smoke and ash. It's over, she whispered when the fire went out. It has no power over me anymore. Little by little, Beth began to heal. Physically, her body recovered well. She gained healthy weight. Her hair shone again. The wounds had scarred over, but emotionally, it took more time. There were good days when she laughed as we cooked together or tended to the garden plants, and there were bad days when she stayed in her room all day without speaking, staring out the window with empty eyes. One night, after one of those difficult days, I went to her room. Can I come in? I asked from the door. Come in, Mrs. Miller. I sat on the edge of her bed. Do you want to talk about what happened today? She shook her head at first, then, after a long silence, she began to speak. Sometimes I still hear him, she said with a broken voice. I hear his voice screaming at me, telling me I'm useless, telling me I'm nothing. And even though I know he's in prison, even though I know he can't hurt me, the voice is still there, in my head. I took her hand. Those voices will take time to go away, I said. But every day that passes, they will get weaker. I promise you. How do you know? Because I have voices too, I admitted. Voices that tell me I'm a bad mother, that I should have seen what was happening, that I should have protected you better. You saved me, Mrs. Miller. I was late, I said. But I'm here now, and we're going to silence those voices together. In January, I encouraged Beth to call her parents. It had been so long, nearly 6 years without talking to them. She was afraid. What if they're mad at me? She asked. What if they blame me for not asking for help? They won't blame you, I assured her. They will love you because you are their daughter. Finally, one Sunday afternoon, she dialed the number. I stayed by her side while she waited for them to answer. After 3 rings, she heard her mother's voice. Hello, Mom, Beth said with a trembling voice. It's me. It's Beth. There was a silence. Then a scream. Beth! Oh my God! Beth, is it really you? Is it you? Yes, Mom, it's me. And then both of them began to cry. They talked for 2 hours. Beth told her everything. Her mother cried, screamed in rage, cried again, and finally said what Beth needed to hear. I love you, honey. I never stopped loving you, and I'm coming to see you. Your father and I will be there as soon as we can. 2 weeks later, Beth's parents arrived at the ranch. Martha was a small woman with gray hair and eyes full of pain. Arthur was a quiet man with large hands and an even larger heart. When they saw Beth, they ran to her and hugged her as if they wanted to merge into one being. Forgive me, Mom, Beth sobbed. Forgive me for not calling, for not asking for help. You have nothing to be forgiven for, my child, Martha replied. Nothing. What matters is that you are alive, that you are here. They stayed with us for a week. That week was healing. Martha and I cooked together. Arthur helped with repairs around the ranch. And Beth was a daughter again, a loved daughter, a valued daughter. The day they left, Beth cried, but they were different tears. They're tears of gratitude, she told me, not pain. In February, Beth decided she wanted to study again. She had left college when she married Frank. She was only 2 semesters away from finishing her nursing degree. I want to finish what I started, she told me one morning. I want to be a nurse. I want to help other people who are suffering. Then we'll do it, I said. We'll find a way. We contacted the university in the city and explained the situation. Some professors were sympathetic, others not so much. But finally, after several meetings, they allowed her to re-enroll. I'll have to repeat some classes, Beth said. And I don't know if I can pay the tuition. I'll help you, I offered. No, Mrs. Miller, you've already done too much. I want to do it, I insisted. Please, let me help you, she accepted with tears in her eyes. In March, Beth started classes again. She traveled to the city 3 times a week. At first, she was afraid to be alone on the road, to see strangers, to be in open spaces without me, but slowly she began to feel more secure. I talked to a classmate today, she told me one afternoon with a shy smile. Her name is Gabrielle. She's very nice. She invited me to study with her next week. And are you going to go? I think so, she said. I'm a little scared, but I want to try. Watching Beth rebuild her social life, her confidence, her identity, it was like watching a withered flower bloom again under the sun. One day in April, Beth received a letter. It was from the prison where Frank was held. When I saw the envelope, I felt my stomach turn. Do you want me to open it first? I asked. No, Beth said with a firm voice. I'll do it. She sat in the garden under the shade of a tree and opened the letter. I stayed nearby in case she needed me. She read in silence for several minutes, then folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, and looked at me. What does it say? I asked. He says he's sorry, she replied calmly. He says he's been going to therapy in prison, that he's working on himself, that he understands the damage he did to me, that if I can ever forgive him, he would be grateful. And what do you feel? Beth looked at the letter in her hands. I don't know, she admitted. Part of me wants to believe him. Part of me hopes he really changes. But another part knows it's not my problem anymore. His change is his responsibility, not mine. You're right, I said. You don't have to forgive him if you don't want to. And if one day you decide to do it, it will be on your terms, not his. Beth nodded. I'm not going to answer this letter, she said. At least not now. Maybe one day. But right now I need to focus on me, on healing, on living. That afternoon, Beth planted a rose bush in the garden. It's to remind me, she said while digging the soil, that even things with thorns can create beauty. By May, the ranch had completely changed. The garden was blooming, the walls were painted, the pens were full of life. We had hired 2 employees from town to help with the heavy work. And Beth no longer walked with her head down. She walked upright, with dignity, with strength. One night, while we were eating dinner together, she said something I will never forget. "Mrs. Miller, thank you. Why are you thanking me? For not giving up on me," she said, "for believing that I was worth saving." "You were always worth it, Beth," I replied. "Always." She smiled, and in that smile, I saw the woman who was emerging from the ashes of her past, strong, free, alive. While I tell you this, I wonder where you are listening from. Write the name of your city in the comments. While Beth healed, I carried my own weight, a silent weight I took with me every day, every night, in every breath, maternal guilt. It was June when I finally broke down. Beth had gone to the city for her classes. I was alone at the ranch, cleaning the kitchen after breakfast. Suddenly, for no apparent reason, I started to cry. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. I cried for my son, for the sweet boy who hugged puppies and who was now in a prison cell. I cried for Beth, for the 8 years she lost, the 8 years I couldn't protect her. I cried for Robert, my husband, who died without knowing what our son would become. And I cried for myself, for the woman who fled when she should have stayed, for the mother who failed. I sat on the kitchen floor with my back against the wall and cried until I had no tears left. When Beth returned that afternoon and found me like that, she was scared. "Mrs. Miller, what happened? Are you okay?" I couldn't answer her immediately. She knelt in front of me and took my hands. "Tell me," she said softly, "please." And then, for the first time, I told her everything I had kept inside. "I feel responsible," I told her with a broken voice, "for everything. For how Frank turned out, for not stopping him in time, for leaving you here alone with him. It's not your fault, Mrs. Miller." "Yes, it is," I insisted. "I'm his mother. I was supposed to teach him to be a good man, to respect women, to be compassionate, but I failed. Somewhere along the way, I failed." Beth squeezed my hands. "You didn't fail. Frank made his own decisions. You didn't hit me. You didn't lock me up. He did all that. But I raised him," I said. "I fed him. I clothed him. I took him to school. I taught him his prayers. At what point did he stop listening? At what point did he break?" "I don't know," Beth admitted. "But what I do know is that you did the right thing when you came back. Many mothers would have protected their sons no matter what they did. You chose justice. You chose to protect me." "But he is my son," I whispered. "My only son, and he is in jail because of me." "No," Beth said firmly. "He is in jail because of him. Because of his actions. Because of his decisions." I wanted to believe her, but the weight was still there. That night, when Beth went to sleep, I pulled an old box out of my closet. It was a shoebox full of photographs, photos of Frank at different stages of his life. Frank as a newborn, wrapped in a yellow blanket. Frank at 3 years old with a birthday cake full of candles. Frank at 7 on his first day of school. Frank at 10 playing football in the yard. Frank at 15, serious, starting to look like a man. Frank at 20, graduating from college. In every photograph, I looked for signs, hints, clues of what would come later, but I couldn't find them. I only saw a normal boy, an ordinary young man, someone who could have been anything. When did he change? Was it gradual or sudden? Was there a specific moment when he stopped being my son and became that? I had no answers, and maybe I never would. The next morning, I decided I needed professional help. I asked Mr. Henderson to recommend a therapist. "It's important that you take care of your mental health, Agnes," he told me. "What you've been through is traumatic, not just for Beth, but for you too." He gave me the name of a psychologist in town, Dr. Mendez. My first session was on a Thursday afternoon. Dr. Mendez was a woman in her 40s, with a calm voice and a sympathetic gaze. "Tell me why you're here," she said after we introduced ourselves. And I told her everything. I told her about Frank, about Beth, about the Coop, about the report, about the sentence, and I told her about the guilt that was eating me alive. Doctor. Mendez listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded slowly. Agnes, what you are feeling is completely normal, she said. It's what we call maternal guilt. Many mothers feel they are responsible for everything their children do or fail to do. But the truth is that children, when they grow up, make their own decisions. You didn't control Frank's actions. He chose them. But I raised him, I repeated. I should have seen something. Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't. But even if you had seen signs, there is no guarantee you could have stopped him. Abusers are experts at hiding what they do. And your son had 8 years to perfect his cruelty while you were away. That's why I feel worse, I admitted. Because I left. Because I escaped when I should have stayed. What if I had stayed? Do you think things would have been different? The doctor asked. I thought about it honestly. I don't know, I said. Maybe Frank would have waited until I left some other way. Maybe he would have been more careful. Or maybe I would have become his victim too. The doctor nodded. Exactly. We can't know what would have happened. All we know is what did happen. And when you found out, when you saw what was going on, you acted. You saved Beth and you faced your own son. That requires immense courage. I don't feel brave, I whispered. I feel broken. It's okay to feel broken, the doctor said. The important thing is that you don't stay broken forever. During the following weeks, I kept going to therapy. Every session was like peeling an onion, layer after layer of pain, guilt, and unanswered questions. Doctor, Mendez helped me understand several things. That I hadn't created a monster. That Frank had made conscious choices. That leaving Texas hadn't been cowardice but emotional survival. That saving Beth didn't erase my guilt, but it did demonstrate my character. And that forgiving myself was going to take time, a lot of time. Self-forgiveness is the hardest of all, the doctor told me in one session, but it is the most important. One afternoon in July, I received a call. It was from the prison. Frank wanted to see me. I had rejected his calls for months. I had ignored his letters. But this time, something in me felt I should go. Maybe to close a cycle, maybe to get the answers I needed, or maybe simply to look him in the eyes one last time. I told Beth I was going to visit him. Do you want me to go with you? She asked. No, I replied. This is something I need to do alone. The following Saturday, I drove to the prison. The visiting room was more crowded than the last time. There were mothers with small children, young wives, sisters all waiting to see their loved ones. I wondered how many of them carried the same guilt as I did. When they brought Frank out, I almost didn't recognize him. He had lost more weight. His hair had gray in it I hadn't noticed before. He had a small scar over his left eyebrow. He sat across from me. He didn't smile. Mom, he said, thanks for coming. I nodded in silence. I know I don't deserve your time, he continued. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I needed to see you. What for? I asked. To tell you that you were right. I looked at him, surprised. Right about what? About everything, he said with a trembling voice. About reporting me, about not protecting me, about choosing Beth over me. You were right. I didn't know what to say. I've been in therapy here, he continued. Mandatory therapy for abusers. And I've had to face everything. Everything I did. Everything I was. And Mom, I don't know how I became that person. I don't know either, I admitted. Sometimes I wonder if I was always broken, he said. If something inside me was always wrong, or if it was the stress, the pressure, the loneliness, after Dad died and you left. Don't blame me for your decisions, Frank. I'm not blaming you, he said quickly. I swear. I'm just trying to understand. There was a long silence. Have you really changed? I asked. Or are you just telling me what I want to hear? Frank looked down. I don't know, Mom. Honestly, I don't know. Some days I feel like I understand how terrible I was. Other days I get angry. I get angry at you for reporting me. I get angry at Beth for testifying. I get angry at myself for being so weak. At least he was being honest. What do you want from me, Frank? I asked directly. Why did you call me? He looked up. His eyes were moist. I want you to know that I'm sorry I disappointed you, he said. I'm sorry I wasn't the son you deserved. I'm sorry I destroyed everything Dad and you built. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I turned into the worst version of myself. I'm sorry too, I said. I'm sorry I didn't see you changing. I'm sorry I didn't intervene sooner. I'm sorry for many things. Do you think one day you can forgive me? The question hung in the air between us. I don't know, I answered honestly. Maybe one day, but not today. Frank nodded, accepting my answer. That's okay, he said. I understand. We stayed in silence for the last few minutes of the visit. When the guard announced time was up, Frank stood up. Thanks for coming, Mom. Take care of yourself, Frank. I left that room feeling strange. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel closure. I just felt tired, a deep tiredness. When I returned to the ranch, Beth was waiting for me in the garden. How did it go? She asked. Hard, I replied, but necessary. He said something important. He said he's sorry. I don't know if I believe him, but at least he said it. Beth nodded. And how do you feel? I sat on a garden bench. Beth sat beside me. I feel tired, I admitted. Tired of carrying so much guilt. Tired of wondering what I could have done differently. Then maybe it's time to let go, Beth said softly. Let go of the guilt. Let go of the past. Let go of everything we can't change. I looked at the garden we had rebuilt together, the flowers, the trees, the life growing where there used to be only pain. You're right, I said. It's time to let go. And in that moment, for the first time in months, I felt that maybe, just maybe, I could heal too. I still wonder if one day I will be able to forgive myself completely. What would you have done in my place? August arrived with soft rains and clear skies. Beth finished her semester with excellent grades. She was one step away from graduating as a nurse. They offered me an internship at the community hospital, she told me one morning over breakfast. I start in September. That's wonderful, honey, I replied, genuinely proud. Mrs. Miller, I've been thinking about something, she said with that voice she used when she had something important to say. Tell me. When I graduate, when I have a stable job, I want to buy your share of the ranch. I looked at her, surprised. What? You've done so much for me, she continued. You saved my life, you gave me a home, you helped me study, and I want you to know that I don't want to live on your charity. I want to work. I want to pay my own way. I felt a knot in my throat. Beth, this ranch is as much yours as it is mine, but legally it isn't, she said. And I want it to be. I want us to build something together, something that is ours. I reached across the table and took her hand. Then we'll do it, I said. When you're ready, no rush. She smiled, and in that smile, I saw the future we both deserved. In September, Beth started her internship. She worked 3 days a week at the hospital, caring for patients, learning, growing. One Friday afternoon, she came home with bright eyes. I saw a woman today, she told me. She came in with bruises on her arms. She said she had fallen, but I recognized the lie, because I said the same thing for years. What did you do? I talked to her in private, Beth said. I told her that if she needed help, there were people who could support her. I gave her phone numbers for shelters, for lawyers, and she cried. She thanked me. I don't know if she'll ask for help, but at least now she knows she can. In that moment, I understood that Beth's pain hadn't been in vain. It had become her purpose. By October, the ranch was completely transformed. It was no longer the abandoned, sad place I had found last November. It was a home. Beth and I worked together in the garden every morning. We had hired more help. The production of the land had improved. One afternoon, while we were picking vegetables from the garden, Beth said something I hadn't expected. Do you know what day it is today, Mrs. Miller? What day? It's been a year since you came back. A year since you opened that chicken coop door. I stopped. I hadn't realized. A year. 12 months since I found Beth eating raw corn. 12 months since I reported my son. 12 months since everything changed. How do you feel? I asked. Beth looked at the sky. The afternoon sun shone on her face. Free, she said simply. I feel free. In November, we received news about Frank. His lawyer informed us that he had requested that we no longer try to visit him. He says he needs time to work on himself, the lawyer explained. That contact with you two is complicated for his process. Beth and I looked at each other. That's fine, I said. I'll respect his decision. Me too, Beth added. And so we closed that door, not with rage, not with pain, simply with acceptance. Frank had his path, and we had ours. In December, Beth officially graduated as a nurse. The ceremony was small but beautiful. Her parents traveled from Pennsylvania. I sat in the front row. When they called her to the stage and handed her the degree, we all stood up and cheered. Beth was crying with happiness. That night, we celebrated at the ranch with a special dinner. Martha cooked, Arthur brought music, and we all danced under the stars. "A toast to Beth," I said, raising my glass. "For her strength, for her courage, for turning her pain into purpose." "And a toast to you, Mrs. Miller," Beth replied, "for not giving up, for choosing justice, for being the mother I never had." We hugged tightly, and I knew that despite everything, we had won. Not against Frank, but against fear, against silence, against resignation. We had won our freedom. And that was the only thing that mattered. While I tell you this, I wonder where you are listening from. Write the name of your city in the comments. Several months passed without hearing anything from Frank, until in March I received a call from Mr. Henderson. "Agnes, I need to inform you about something regarding your son." My heart raced. What happened? Frank was moved to the medical wing of the prison. There was an incident. What kind of incident? A fight with other inmates. It seems word got out about why he was in there. Some prisoners don't tolerate men who abuse women. They beat him. I felt a chill. Is he okay? Physically, he'll recover. But Agnes, he's in isolation for his own safety, and according to the prison psychologist's reports, he is not doing well emotionally. What do you mean? He's depressed, isolated, alone. He says he finally understands what it's like to be locked up without being able to get out, what constant fear feels like. I was silent. Irony or justice? I asked in a low voice. Maybe both, the lawyer replied. I didn't go visit him. I know it sounds cruel, but I had learned something important in therapy. It wasn't my responsibility to rescue Frank from the consequences of his own acts. He had chosen his path. Now he had to walk it. I told Beth about the call. "How do you feel?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me feels pity. He is my son, but another part feels that life is doing what I couldn't do for years. Teaching him what it feels like," Beth said. I nodded. "He once called me crazy," Beth continued in a calm voice. "He told me no one would believe me, that I was an exaggerator, that I deserved everything he did to me. And now he is alone in a cell with fear, with no one to visit him, and I am here free, with a job, with a future. Life always collects its debts, Mrs. Miller." She was right. In May, I received a letter from Frank. It was shorter than the previous ones, and more honest too. "Mom, I understand now what I did to Beth. In here, locked up, unable to leave, with fear every day. I understand now. I'm not asking for forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it. I just want you to know that I finally understand, and I am ashamed." I showed the letter to Beth. "Do you think he's sincere?" she asked. "I think the pain is making him sincere," I replied. "Sometimes people only learn when they feel in their own flesh what they made others feel. It's sad that it had to come to this for him to understand." "Yes," I said. "Very sad." I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I didn't answer it. Maybe one day I would, but not that day. In June, Mr. Henderson called me again. "Agnes, Frank has requested to participate in a restorative justice program in the prison." "What is that?" "It's a program where offenders work on understanding the damage they caused. They write letters of apology to their victims. They do community work inside the prison. It's voluntary." "And Frank signed up?" "Yes, and the reason I'm telling you is because part of the program includes the possibility of victims reading those letters or, if they wish, participating in mediated sessions. Beth would have to agree." I told Beth. Her response was immediate. "No," she said firmly. "I don't want to read his letters. I don't want to see him. I don't want to participate in anything that has to do with him." "Are you sure?" "Completely," she replied. "My healing doesn't depend on him apologizing. My peace doesn't depend on him. I already gave him too many years of my life. I'm not giving him 1 minute more." I informed the lawyer of Beth's decision. "It's her right," he said, "and it's a wise decision." By July, the news coming from the prison was clear. Frank was facing the natural consequences of his actions. The other prisoners avoided him. The guards watched him with distrust. His lawyer told me he had lost weight again, that he slept poorly, that he had constant nightmares. He wakes up screaming, the lawyer told me. He says he dreams he's locked in small places without being able to get out, like a chicken coop, like the prison he created for Beth. Life has a memory, I told the lawyer, and it pays back with the same currency. One afternoon in August, Beth and I were in the garden when she asked me, "Mrs. Miller, do you think Frank will ever come out as a better person?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "That depends on him, on whether he really learns or just suffers. Suffering doesn't always teach. Sometimes it just hardens people more. But if he learns," I said, "if he truly learns, maybe when he gets out of prison he can do something good with what's left of his life. But that will be his decision, not mine, and definitely not yours." Beth nodded. "I'm glad it's not my problem anymore," she said. "For years, everything he felt was my problem, his anger, his frustration, his violence, but not anymore. Now it's his problem, and I am free to live my life." "Exactly," I said, smiling. "Free." The following months confirmed something I had suspected from the beginning. You don't need to seek revenge when you let life do its work. Frank was paying for every hit, for every insult, for every day he locked Beth up. Not by my hand, not with my hatred, but with the natural consequences of his own choices. Loneliness, fear, isolation, late regret, that was justice. Not the loud justice of the movies, but the quiet justice of life, the kind that always arrives, sooner or later. I still wonder if one day Frank will find true peace, but I know that is no longer my burden. What would you have done in my place? Today it is December again. It has been almost 2 years since I opened that chicken coop door. Almost 2 years since I saw Beth eating raw corn. Almost 2 years since my life changed forever. I am sitting in the ranch garden, watching the sun set behind the hills. Beth is beside me, knitting a scarf for the winter. She is 31 now. She works as a nurse at the local hospital. The patients adore her. Her colleagues respect her. She no longer walks with her head down. She no longer trembles when someone raises their voice. She no longer apologizes for existing. "What are you thinking about, Mrs. Miller?" she asks without looking up from her knitting. "Everything," I reply. "How we got here. Everything that happened. Do you regret anything?" "Many things," I admit. "Leaving 8 years ago, not seeing the signs in time, not protecting you better, but you saved me when I needed it most." "And you?" I ask. "Do you regret anything?" She thinks for a moment. "I regret taking so long to believe I deserved better," she answers. "But I don't regret surviving, and I don't regret being here now." I smile. "You are wise for your age. Pain makes you wise," she says, though I'd prefer not to have had to learn that way. Last week, Beth signed the papers. The ranch is now officially owned by both of us, half mine, half hers, as it should be. "This is more than a house," she told me as she signed. "It's our testimony that you can rebuild, that you can start over." And she's right. This ranch, which was once the stage for so much pain, is now a symbol of hope. We have turned the place where the coop stood into a garden of wildflowers, a garden that blooms every spring, like a promise that life always finds a way to be reborn. A month ago, Beth met a doctor at the hospital. His name is Dr. Matthews. He is kind, respectful, and patient. The first time she brought him home, I watched him closely. I watched how he spoke to her, how he treated her, how he looked at her, and I saw respect, I saw tenderness, I saw a man who saw her as a complete human being, not as property. "What do you think of him?" Beth asked me after he left. "I think you deserve someone like him," I replied. "Someone who values you, who respects you, who never raises a hand or a voice against you." "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Afraid to trust again, to believe again." "It's normal to be afraid," I said. "But don't let fear steal the chance to be happy. Give yourself the opportunity, and if something doesn't feel right, walk away. Now you know how to recognize the signs." She nodded. "This time will be different," she said, "because I am different." As for Frank, we know little. He is still in prison. He has 16 years left. He no longer writes letters. He no longer asks for visits. His lawyer says he is in constant therapy, that he works in the prison library, that he stays out of trouble. He says one day he wants to ask for forgiveness in person, the lawyer told me, but he knows he has to earn it, and that he might never get it. I don't know if I will ever forgive him. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I have learned that forgiveness isn't something I owe him. It's something I owe myself to let go, to heal, so I can truly close that chapter when I'm ready. If I ever am. What I do know is this. I did the right thing. It wasn't easy. It wasn't without pain. It wasn't without guilt. But it was right. Because a mother who truly loves her son doesn't protect him from consequences. She lets him face them so he can grow, so he can change, or at least so he can't do any more harm. And a woman who truly values herself doesn't allow fear to paralyze her. She gets up, she rebuilds, and she helps others do the same. Beth now gives talks at the hospital, talks about domestic violence, about warning signs, about how to ask for help. The first time I heard her speak in front of a group of women, I cried. I cried with pride, because the woman I had found eating raw corn in a coop was now standing tall with a firm voice, telling other women, "You are not alone. It is not your fault. And there is a way out. That is true justice. Not just locking up the abuser, but freeing the victim, giving her a voice, giving her power, giving her a future." The sun has set completely. The stars are beginning to appear in the dark Texas sky. Beth puts her knitting away and stands up. "I'm going to make dinner," she says. "What would you like?" "Whatever you want, honey." She walks into the house, whistling a tune, and I stay here for a moment longer, thinking, remembering, giving thanks. Because despite all the pain, despite all the darkness, we found the light. If my story helps just one woman open her eyes, it will have been worth it. If my decision not to protect my son inspires just one mother to choose justice over silence, it will have been worth it. If Beth's testimony gives strength to just one person to leave their own chicken coop, it will have been worth it. Because in the end, that is what matters. Not revenge, not hatred, but healing, justice, and the courage to say no more. My name is Agnes Miller. I am 60 years old, and this is my story. A story of pain, but also of dignity. Of loss, but also of rebirth. Of a son who lost himself in the darkness, and a woman who found the light. Thank you for listening to the end. God bless you. And remember, always, always, there is a way out. You just have to be brave enough to take it.